The Galactic Council Hall was a massive structure floating in deep space, a place where the most powerful species in the universe gathered to discuss laws, trade, and war. Hundreds of alien diplomats sat in their designated seats, their colorful robes, scales, or metallic bodies reflecting the dim lighting. It was a place of order, tradition, and absolute authority. Among them sat Maria, the only human in the hall today. She was just an assistant, not a full diplomat, but she had been allowed to observe these meetings as part of her training. Humans were one of the newest members of the Galactic Council, and most of the older species still saw them as young and inexperienced. As the meeting progressed, the delegates spoke about economy, border security, and resource management. It was the same as always, calm, formal, and political. But then, a new topic appeared on the agenda. The next issue. The council speaker, a floating blue orb named Celian, announced, is regarding the treatment of lesser creatures in various star systems. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing images of different animals from different planets. Some were large and reptilian, others small and furry. Many were caged, chained, or being used for entertainment in cruel ways. Maria's hands tightened into fists as she saw the suffering of these creatures. She had heard stories before, but now she was seeing undeniable proof. It was heartbreaking. She waited, expecting someone to say something, perhaps to call for laws that would stop this cruelty. But instead, laughter echoed across the hall. Why is this even on the agenda? One ambassador scoffed. It was Vrix, the delegate from the Tyran Empire, a large reptilian species known for their strength and dominance. Lesser creatures have no intelligence, no value beyond what we use them for. Another delegate, a member of the Zorth Collective, nodded in agreement. They are food, labor, entertainment. That is their purpose. This discussion is a waste of time. Maria's heart pounded. Was no one going to say anything? Would this discussion be dismissed so easily? She looked at the human ambassador, but he sat silent, unwilling to challenge the council's majority. She couldn't take it anymore. Maria stood up. This is wrong. The hall went silent. Hundreds of alien eyes turned toward her. A mere assistant, daring to speak. It was unheard of. The council speaker, Celian, pulsed a dull shade of orange, signaling displeasure. Human representative, you do not have the right to. Then let the official human ambassador say it, Maria interrupted, turning to her superior. But the ambassador hesitated, glancing around nervously. He knew that if he spoke, it could damage human relations with the council. Maria clenched her fists. If no one else would speak, she would. Why is no one taking this seriously? She demanded. These creatures feel pain. They suffer just like we do, and yet we treat them as if they are nothing. A murmur spread through the chamber, some amused, some irritated. Vrix leaned forward, his yellow eyes narrowing. Tell me, human girl, what do you expect us to do? Ban the use of lesser creatures. What next? Will you demand equal rights for plants? Laughter rippled through the crowd. Maria refused to be intimidated. I expect you to act like the advanced species you claim to be, she shot back. Civilization is not measured by power or technology. It is measured by how we treat those who are weaker than us. Silence fell once again. A few delegates looked uncomfortable. Others simply smirked. Finally, Vrix sneered. If you humans care so much, then prove it. Prove that these creatures have value beyond what we use them for. Bring undeniable evidence, and maybe, just maybe, the council will listen. Maria took a deep breath. Fine, she said firmly. I will. The meeting continued as if nothing had happened, but Maria knew the challenge had been set. She had one cycle, 1 month, to prove the worth of these creatures. If she failed, the council would ignore this matter forever. As she left the chamber, she knew one thing for certain. No one else would fight this battle. It was up to her now. Maria walked out of the Galactic Council chamber, her heart still racing. The echoes of laughter and dismissive voices rang in her ears. She had spoken out, but had it made any difference? She was just a human assistant, standing against some of the most powerful species in the galaxy. Her superior, Ambassador Nolan, caught up to her in the hallway. He was an older man, respected but cautious. "Maria," he said in a low voice, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I did what was right," Maria replied, her voice steady. Nolan sighed. "You challenged a system that has existed for centuries. The Council doesn't care about what's right. They care about power, trade, and control. You embarrassed them." "Good," Maria said firmly. "They should be embarrassed." The ambassador shook his head. "Do you really think you can change their minds? The Tyrants, the Zorth, the Letharians, most of them see lesser creatures as tools, nothing more. And you've given them a challenge. If you fail, they'll use it as proof that compassion is useless." "I won't fail," Maria said, though deep down, doubt crept in. Nolan studied her for a moment. Then, with a sigh, he said, "I can't officially help you, but if you need resources, ask. Just be careful." Maria nodded. She wasn't expecting help. She had made this choice alone, and she would fight alone if needed. Back in her small quarters on the human diplomatic ship, Maria sat in front of a holographic screen, searching for answers. There had to be proof. Something undeniable that showed these creatures weren't just mindless beasts. She searched databases from different planets, looking for studies on animal intelligence. Some reports showed creatures solving puzzles, recognizing themselves in mirrors, or forming deep emotional bonds. But she knew this wouldn't be enough. The Council would argue that intelligence didn't matter, that only sentient species deserved rights. Maria ran a hand through her hair, frustrated. "There has to be more," she muttered. She sent messages to xenobiologists, researchers, and even a few sympathetic diplomats, asking for any information on lesser creatures showing signs of true awareness. Days passed, and the responses trickled in, some useful, most not. Then, one night, a new message arrived. Sender, Dr. Elric Dovin. Subject, urgent. You need to see this. Maria opened it quickly. Dr. Dovin was a human scientist who had worked in alien research facilities. "Maria, I saw your speech. You're brave for speaking out, but you won't win this fight with words alone. You need proof that shakes the Council to its core. I know where you can find it. There's a research facility on Korath 7, run by a mix of species, including some Council members. They capture and experiment on lesser creatures, testing their pain tolerance, brain function, and more. If you expose what happens there, the Council won't be able to ignore it. But be careful. Many powerful people don't want this place to be known. I've attached coordinates. Good luck." Maria stared at the screen. A hidden facility. If what Dr. Dovin said was true, this could be the key to proving her case. But breaking into a restricted zone was dangerous, possibly illegal. She took a deep breath. Did she really have a choice? The next day, Maria approached two fellow humans on the diplomatic ship. Daniel, an engineer, and Lion, a security officer. She trusted them. "You want to sneak into a classified research facility." Lion raised an eyebrow. "Maria, this isn't just politics anymore. This is dangerous." "I know," Maria said, "but this could be the proof we need." Daniel leaned forward. "You're serious about this?" Maria nodded. "I can't do this alone. But if we get in, record what's happening, and bring it back to the Council, they won't be able to deny the truth." Lian crossed her arms. "And if they try to stop us?" Maria's jaw tightened. "Then we show them what humans do when we see injustice." There was a long silence. Then, finally, Daniel grinned. "All right, let's do it." Lion sighed but nodded. "We'll need a plan." Maria felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't alone in this fight after all. The mission to Koreth 7 had begun. Maria stood at the viewing deck of the human diplomatic ship, staring at the vastness of space. The weight of her decision pressed down on her. She had accepted Vrix's challenge in front of the entire Galactic Council. Now she had 1 month to prove that lesser creatures deserved protection. If she failed, the Council would use her failure as an excuse to ignore the issue forever. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Her communicator was receiving a message. She tapped the screen, and Ambassador Nolan's face appeared. His expression was serious. "Maria," he said, "I just spoke with the Council speaker. There are already rumors spreading that you're planning something dangerous." Maria's jaw tightened. "I know the risks. But if we don't act, no one else will." Nolan sighed. "Do you have a plan?" "Yes," she said. "I found a research facility on Koreth 7. It's run by a mix of Council species. If we can get inside and record what's happening there, we'll have undeniable proof." Nolan's face darkened. "Maria, that facility is in restricted space. If you get caught, it won't just be the Council against you. It'll be the entire galactic system. The Council doesn't like humans as it is. They're waiting for an excuse to push us down." Maria took a deep breath. "Then I won't get caught." The ambassador shook his head. "Be careful," he said, and the screen went dark. Maria turned to Daniel and Leon, who had been listening. "We have no time to waste. Let's go over the plan again." Koreth 7 was a barren world with a thick, cloudy atmosphere. The research facility sat in the middle of a rocky wasteland, heavily guarded and hidden from public records. The only ships allowed to land belonged to scientists and high-ranking council members. Maria and her team couldn't risk flying in directly. Instead, they used a small cargo vessel, pretending to be part of a supply delivery. Daniel, who had experience with ship systems, hacked into the facility's logs and added their fake credentials. As the ship descended through the thick atmosphere, Maria felt her pulse quicken. If anything went wrong, they would be captured or worse. "We're coming in," Daniel said from the pilot's seat. "Try to look like we belong." The facility loomed ahead, a massive gray structure with tall walls and security towers. As they approached the docking bay, a robotic voice crackled over the communicator. "State your purpose." Daniel responded smoothly. "Supply transfer, clearance code 8492X. There was a pause. Maria held her breath. Then the voice replied, "Confirmed. Proceed to docking bay 3. They exchanged relieved glances. Phase 1 of the plan had worked. Inside the facility, the air was cold and sterile. The walls were metallic, and the lights flickered with a dim, artificial glow. Scientists and guards moved through the hallways, too busy to notice the new arrivals. Maria, Daniel, and Lion wore gray uniforms to blend in. They moved carefully, following the directions Dr. Dovin had sent. After a few turns, they reached a locked door labeled Testing Chamber 7. Lion pulled out a small device, attaching it to the panel. After a few seconds, the lock clicked open. What they saw inside made Maria's stomach turn. Rows of cages lined the walls, each containing a different creature. Some were small, trembling in fear. Others were larger, their eyes filled with exhaustion. Machines monitored their vital signs, while robotic arms performed tests, some of them painful. Maria clenched her fists. "This is worse than I imagined." Daniel pulled out a recording device, capturing everything. "We need to get enough footage to prove what's happening here." Leon moved toward a large containment unit, reading the files attached. They'd been experimenting on brain function, stress responses, and endurance levels. Some of these creatures have been here for years. Maria approached one of the cages. Inside was a small, furry creature with large eyes. It let out a weak sound, barely lifting its head. She reached out gently. "We'll get you out of here," she whispered. But before they could do anything else, a loud alarm blared through the facility. "Security breach detected." A robotic voice announced, "All personnel, lockdown in progress." Maria's heart pounded. They had been discovered. Lian pulled out a small blaster. "We need to get out. Now." Daniel grabbed the recorder. "We have the proof. We just have to make it back to the ship." The hallway filled with the sound of approaching footsteps. Guards were coming. Maria took one last look at the trapped creatures. She couldn't save them all. Not now. But if they escaped, they could expose the truth. Taking a deep breath, she turned to her team. "Let's move." The fight had just begun. The blaring alarms echoed through the metal corridors of the research facility. Red warning lights flashed as security forces rushed toward the intruders. Maria, Daniel, and Lion sprinted through the hallways, their hearts pounding. They had the proof they needed, video recordings of the cruel experiments. But now, they had to escape. "We need to get back to the ship before they lock down the docking bay," Daniel shouted. Maria clutched the small recording device tightly. "We can't let them catch us. If they do, this evidence will be destroyed." Lion checked her blaster's charge. "We'll make it. Just keep running." Behind them, heavy boots slammed against the ground as guards chased after them. Laser shots whizzed past, scorching the metal walls. Maria ducked as a shot nearly hit her. "Faster," she yelled. They turned a corner and found themselves in a large chamber with high ceilings. It was a storage area filled with metal crates and supply containers. A few worker droids moved around, oblivious to the chaos. "We can hide here for a moment," Daniel said, pulling Maria and Lion behind a stack of crates. They crouched low, catching their breath. Maria could hear the guards shouting orders, searching for them. They didn't have much time. Lion peeked over the crates. "They're blocking the main exit. We need another way out." Maria looked around, scanning the room. Then she spotted something, a small ventilation shaft near the ceiling. It was big enough for them to crawl through. "There," she pointed. "That vent might lead to another hallway." Daniel sighed. "Of course, it has to be a vent. Why do escape plans always involve vents?" Lion smirked. "Because they work. Come on, help me up." Daniel boosted Lion into the shaft first, then helped Maria climb in. Finally, he pulled himself up just as the guards entered the storage area. The team crawled through the narrow tunnel, moving quickly but carefully. The metal walls were cold, and the air smelled of machine oil. Maria's heart pounded. If the vent led to a dead end, they were trapped. Suddenly, a faint blue light appeared ahead. "We're almost there," Lion whispered. They reached the end of the tunnel and peered through the metal grate. Below them was a dimly lit maintenance hallway. No guards in sight. Lion kicked the grate open, and they jumped down one by one. "We're close to the docking bay now," Daniel said, checking the facility's map on his wrist device. "Just one more hallway." They ran again, pushing their exhausted bodies forward. The facility's security lockdown was tightening. Doors were sealing, and alarms continued to blare. Finally, they reached the docking bay. Their small cargo ship was still there, its engines ready for departure. But a squad of guards stood between them and the ramp. Maria gritted her teeth. "We don't have time to fight them." Lion smirked. "We don't need to." She reached into her belt and pulled out a small grenade-like device. "Smoke bomb. Cover your eyes." She tossed it toward the guards. The device exploded into a thick cloud of white smoke, filling the entire area. The guards coughed and shouted in confusion. "Go, go, go," Maria yelled. They ran through the smoke, dodging blindly past the guards. Maria felt hands reach for her, but she slipped away just in time. They reached the ramp and rushed inside the ship. Daniel jumped into the pilot's seat, his fingers flying across the controls. "Strap in. This is gonna be rough." The ship's engines roared to life. The docking bay doors started to close, but Daniel pushed the thrusters to full power. The ship shot forward, barely squeezing through the shrinking exit. Outside, the stormy skies of Korath 7 rage. "We're not safe yet," Lion warned. They'll send patrol ships after us. As if on cue, the facility's security ships launched into pursuit. Bright laser beams flashed past them. Maria held onto her seat. Can we outrun them? Daniel grinned. We're about to find out. He pulled the controls hard, sending the ship into a steep dive through the clouds. The enemy ships followed, trying to lock onto them. Maria watched the radar nervously. They're gaining on us. Daniel's hands moved quickly. Hang on. With a sudden move, he spun the ship and sent it straight toward a thick storm cloud. The enemy ships hesitated for a moment, just long enough for Daniel to fire the ship's boosters and break away. When they emerged from the other side of the storm, the enemy ships were gone. Maria let out a breath of relief. We did it. Lion leaned back in her seat. That was too close. Daniel chuckled. Come on, admit it. That was fun. Maria held up the recording device. Now we have proof. We take this to the council, and they won't be able to ignore us. Lion smirked. Let's see if they're ready to face the truth. The ship set course for the Galactic Council. The real battle was about to begin. Maria sat in the cockpit of their ship, staring at the endless stretch of stars. The mission had been successful. They had escaped Korath 7 with the proof they needed. But now came the hardest part, presenting it to the Galactic Council. Daniel was at the controls, guiding their ship toward the Central Space Station, where the Council held its meetings. Lion stood nearby, checking her weapons out of habit, even though they wouldn't need them in the Council chambers. Maria held the small recording device tightly. Inside it was footage of helpless creatures being locked in cages, tested on, and treated as nothing more than objects. This would prove to everyone what was happening behind closed doors. Lion noticed Maria's tense expression. You okay? Maria sighed. What if they ignore the evidence? What if they find a way to dismiss it? Daniel smirked. Then we make sure they don't. We'll show this to the whole galaxy if we have to. Maria nodded, trying to push away her doubt. The truth was on their side. As their ship approached the massive Galactic Council station, a transmission came through. Unidentified vessel, state your purpose. Daniel responded smoothly. Human diplomatic ship. We have urgent evidence for the Council. There was a brief pause. Then the voice returned. Permission granted. Docket Bay 12. The Council chamber was more crowded than usual. Word had spread about Maria's bold challenge to the Terran delegate, Vrix. Many representatives had gathered, eager to see if the human girl could back up her claims. Maria stood at the center of the grand hall, facing rows of alien officials. Some looked curious, others annoyed. At the highest seat, the Speaker of the Council, an elder Lutherian with gray-blue skin, watched her carefully. Ambassador Nolan stood beside Maria, whispering, Stay calm. They'll try to intimidate you. Across the room, Vrix sat with his arms crossed, his reptilian eyes filled with amusement. The human girl returns. I assume you have something more than just words this time. Maria took a deep breath and stepped forward. Yes, I do. She held up the recording device and pressed a button. A large holographic screen appeared above the chamber. The footage began to play. Gasps filled the room as the images flickered to life. Caged creatures, terrified eyes, cruel experiments. Scientists recorded results while some creatures whimpered in pain. The cold and heartless nature of the facility was undeniable. Maria turned to face the council. This is what happens in secret labs, supported by members of this very council. These creatures feel fear, pain, and sadness. They are not just objects. They are living beings. Silence filled the room. Some delegates looked uncomfortable. Others whispered among themselves. Then, a Zorth representative, a tall figure with shimmering scales, spoke. This cannot be real. Maria met his gaze. It is, and I have the coordinates of the facility if anyone wishes to verify it. Another delegate, a fur-covered Vornak, shook his head. This is disturbing. But what do you expect us to do? These creatures are used for important research. Maria's eyes burned with frustration. At what cost? Do we call ourselves a civilized galaxy while we allow this? Vrix let out a low laugh. This is emotional nonsense. Science must advance, and lesser creatures have always been used for that purpose. Maria stepped forward. If that's true, then where do we draw the line? How do we decide which creatures deserve rights and which do not? Vrix smirked. Simple. Intelligence. Sentience. These creatures have neither. Maria took a deep breath. That's where you're wrong. She pressed another button, playing a second video. It showed a small creature from the lab solving a puzzle, opening a complex lock, and even showing signs of recognition toward a scientist. The next clip showed creatures comforting each other, expressing emotions, and even trying to protect their young. These beings think, feel, and learn, Maria said. They are not mindless animals. If we allow this cruelty to continue, then we are no better than the past civilizations we condemn for their mistakes. The room fell into silence once more. Even the most powerful delegates seemed uncertain. Finally, the Speaker of the Council spoke. This evidence cannot be ignored. An investigation will be conducted. If what you say is true, changes must be made. Maria exhaled, relief washing over her. It wasn't a full victory yet, but it was a step forward. Vrix scowled, but said nothing. Maria could tell he wasn't done fighting back. As she walked out of the chamber, Ambassador Nolan placed a hand on her shoulder. You've done something incredible today. Maria nodded, but she knew the fight wasn't over. The real battle was just beginning. Maria felt a wave of exhaustion as she stepped out of the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. The hearing had gone better than she expected. The council had agreed to investigate. It was the first real step toward change. But deep inside, Maria knew this was far from over. Daniel and Lion walked beside her through the massive hallways of the space station. Ambassador Nolan followed closely, his face tense. That went well, Daniel said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. But why do I feel like we just walked into something bigger? Maria nodded. Because we did. Nolan stopped and looked around to make sure no one was listening. Then, in a low voice, he said, Vrix and his allies won't accept defeat so easily. They have power, influence, and secrets they don't want exposed. Lian crossed her arms. So, what happens next? If the investigation proves Maria's claims, the council will have to change the laws. Nolan's eyes darkened. That's what worries me. People like Vrix don't wait for things to go against them. They act first. Maria clenched her fists. She had known from the start that this wouldn't be easy, but now the danger felt real. If Vrix saw her as a threat, he wouldn't just argue against her. He would try to silence her. Daniel sighed. Great, so now we have to watch our backs. Nolan nodded. Exactly. Until the investigation is complete, you're all in danger. Maria took a deep breath. Then we stay alert. We didn't come this far to back down. Nolan gave her a look of approval. Good. I've arranged for you to stay in a secure part of the station. Stick together. Don't trust anyone outside our circle. Maria glanced around the busy station corridors. Most people passed by without giving them a second look, but how many of them were watching in secret? That night, Maria sat in the small guest quarters they had been assigned. The station's artificial lights dimmed to simulate nighttime, but she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the council meeting. She had exposed the truth, but was it enough? A soft beep on her communicator made her sit up. She checked the screen. It was a message. No sender name, just a single line of text. Leave now. You are not safe. Her breath caught in her throat. She quickly sent a reply. Who are you? No response. Maria stood and grabbed her jacket. She needed to warn the others. She stepped into the hallway and headed toward Daniel and Lion's rooms. But before she could knock, a sudden noise made her freeze. Footsteps. Heavy. unfamiliar. She turned quickly and saw 3 figures in dark armor moving toward her. Their eyes glowed faintly under their helmets. Maria's instincts screamed at her, "Run!" She spun around and dashed down the hallway. The figures immediately followed. Her heart pounded. This part of the station was supposed to be secure. How had they gotten in? Maria turned a corner, searching for an exit. The station was huge, filled with endless hallways. She needed to find Daniel and Lion. Fast. Then a hand grabbed her arm. She gasped, ready to fight, but a familiar voice whispered, "It's me, Daniel." He pulled her into a side corridor, where Lion was already crouched behind a cargo container. "They're after you," Lion whispered. "No kidding," Maria breathed. Daniel peeked around the corner. "They're getting closer. We need a plan." Maria's mind raced. They couldn't fight, not against trained assassins, and they couldn't stay here. Then she saw it, a maintenance hatch on the floor. "There," she pointed. Lion was already moving. She pried the hatch open, revealing a narrow tunnel leading downward. "No choice," Daniel muttered. "Go." Maria slipped in first, followed by Lion. Daniel dropped in last, pulling the hatch closed just as their pursuers reached the hallway. The 3 of them held their breath. Muffled voices came from above, then silence. Maria let out a slow breath. They had escaped, barely. Daniel turned to her. "I'm guessing that message you got wasn't a prank." Maria shook her head. "Someone is helping us, but I don't know who." Lion checked the tunnel ahead. "We can figure that out later. Right now, we need to get off this station." Maria nodded. She had thought the battle would be fought in the council chambers, but now she realized this fight was much bigger than she had ever imagined, and someone was willing to kill to keep the truth buried. Maria's breath was still unsteady as she crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel with Daniel and Lion close behind. The metal walls felt cold, and the only sound was their quiet movements. Above them, the assassins were still searching. Daniel whispered, "Whoever sent that warning saved our lives. But why didn't they tell us more?" Maria gripped the device in her pocket. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe they're being watched too. Lian kept moving ahead, her sharp eyes scanning the tunnel. "Right now, we just need to get out of here." The tunnel stretched forward for what felt like forever before they reached another hatch. Lion carefully pushed it open. They stepped into a dimly lit storage bay. Large crates were stacked high, and worker droids moved between them, paying no attention to the 3 humans. The air smelled of metal and fuel. Maria exhaled. "We're near the lower docking area." Daniel checked his wrist device. "If we can reach the private hangars, we can steal a small transport and escape." Lian raised an eyebrow. "And you think security won't notice a stolen ship flying away?" Daniel grinned. "Not if I override the system first." Maria shook her head. "We don't have time for a long hack. Let's just move fast before they track us down." They slipped through the shadows, avoiding security patrols. Every second felt like a lifetime. As they reached the entrance to the private hangars, a voice stopped them. "You won't make it far alone." All 3 spun around. A figure stepped out from behind a stack of crates. A tall, hooded alien with deep blue skin and piercing silver eyes. They wore a long cloak, their face partially hidden in the shadows. Maria tensed. "Who are you?" The figure's voice was calm but firm. "A friend. One who believes in your cause." Lian didn't lower her guard. "If you're a friend, prove it." The figure slowly reached into their cloak and pulled out a small holopad. A recording flickered to life. It was from the council chambers. Vrix and his allies were speaking in secret. "We should have removed the human girl before she ever stepped foot in the council," Vrix's voice growled. "She's dangerous." Another voice responded. "The investigation will take time. We can control the results. But if she spreads this information outside the council..." Vrix hissed. "Then she must be silenced." Maria's stomach turned. They had expected resistance, but hearing the proof that Vrix was directly ordering her elimination sent a chill down her spine. The hooded figure closed the holopad. You see now. The Council's corruption runs deep. The investigation is just a delay. They will bury the truth unless you act. Daniel crossed his arms. And why should we trust you? The figure lowered their hood slightly, revealing sharp features and silver markings on their forehead. Because I was once part of Vrix's inner circle, but I can no longer stay silent. Maria studied the stranger's face. She could feel sincerity in their voice, but doubt still lingered. What do you want from us? She asked. The figure's silver eyes gleamed. To help you. If you want to truly expose the truth, you need to go beyond the Council. You must take this evidence to the people of the galaxy. Maria hesitated. The Council was slow, full of debates and politics, but the people, if they saw the truth, they would demand change. Leon narrowed her eyes. And how do we do that without getting killed? The figure reached into their cloak again and tossed Daniel a small data chip. There's a ship in Hangar 7. Fast, unregistered, and already programmed with safe routes to neutral space. Daniel caught the chip, eyes widening. You're just giving us a ship. The figure smirked. Let's just say I have no further use for it. Maria looked at the stranger. Why are you risking yourself for us? The figure's expression darkened. Because once I believed in the Council's justice, but I learned the hard way that justice is meaningless without action. Maria nodded. Then we won't waste this chance. The figure stepped back into the shadows. Good luck, human. Then they were gone. Maria turned to her team. Let's move. They sprinted toward Hangar 7. Inside, they found the ship, a sleek, black vessel built for speed. The moment they stepped aboard, Daniel ran to the controls. Engines online, he said. Brace yourselves. As the ship roared to life, alarms blared across the station. Their escape hadn't gone unnoticed. Lion gripped the co-pilot's seat. Here we go again. Maria clenched her fists. The fight wasn't over. In fact, it was only just beginning. They had the proof. Now, they had to show the entire galaxy the truth. The ship shot out of the space station's hangar like a comet, its engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Maria gripped her seat tightly as Daniel pushed the controls to their limit. Behind them, alarms blared across the station, and within seconds, 2 patrol ships gave chase. Lion checked the radar. They're gaining on us. Daniel smirked. Not for long. He twisted the controls sharply, sending their ship into a steep dive toward a nearby asteroid field. Maria watched the screen nervously. Are you sure about this? Daniel grinned. Nope. But it's our best shot. The ship plunged into the asteroid field. Massive rocks floated in the void, spinning and colliding with each other. The patrol ships hesitated for a moment before following. Lion focused on the radar. They're still behind us. Maria clenched her fists. We have to lose them. If they catch us, everything is over. Daniel's hands moved swiftly over the controls. Hold on. He weaved the ship through the maze of asteroids, barely dodging each massive rock. The patrol ships fired, but their shots missed as the floating debris blocked their path. One of the enemy ships tried to follow too closely. A large asteroid suddenly spun in its path, too fast for the pilot to react. The ship smashed into the rock, exploding into a fiery ball. Lion let out a breath. One down. The second ship kept chasing. Maria could feel her heart pounding. They were so close to escaping. Suddenly, the enemy ship launched a tracking missile. A red light flashed on the screen. Missile incoming. Lion shouted. Daniel cursed. They're not giving up. Maria's mind raced. Then she spotted something on the scanner, a large asteroid with a deep crater. She pointed at it. Head there. Hide in the crater. Daniel didn't hesitate. He steered the ship straight toward the asteroid. The enemy pilot thought they were desperate and fired again, But Daniel twisted the ship at the last second, diving straight into the crater. The tracking missile, confused by the sudden movement, lost its lock and smashed into the asteroid's surface, exploding harmlessly. The enemy ship hesitated outside the crater, scanning for their location. But Daniel had already powered down all systems, making them invisible to scanners. The enemy pilot waited for a few seconds, then, thinking they had been destroyed, turned and flew away. Maria finally let out the breath she had been holding. That was too close. Daniel leaned back. Yeah, but we're alive, and we still have the evidence. Lian checked the long-range scanners. We should be clear for now, but they'll keep looking. Maria nodded. Then we don't stop moving. Daniel reactivated the ship's engines, and they carefully exited the asteroid crater. Lian pulled up a galaxy map. Where do we go now? Maria thought for a moment. We need to spread the truth. That means reaching out to independent news networks, activists, and anyone willing to listen. Daniel tapped a few buttons. I know just the place. The Free News Network operates outside of Council control. If we get to them, they can broadcast this to the entire galaxy. Lian frowned. It's risky. Vrix and his allies will try to stop the broadcast. Maria's eyes hardened. Then we just have to get there first. Daniel set the course, and the ship jumped into hyperspace, disappearing into the vast unknown. Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council station, Vrix stood in a dark chamber, his claws tapping against the table. A large screen in front of him showed a red warning. Target escaped. His eyes narrowed. The human girl is more trouble than I expected. A shadowy figure on the screen spoke. She is heading toward Free News Network. If they broadcast the evidence, it will be impossible to cover this up. Vrix's jaw tightened. Then we must make sure that never happens. The figure on the screen nodded. I will send a fleet. The broadcast must not reach the public. Vrix sneered. And if the humans resist? The shadow's voice was cold. Then they will be silenced permanently. Back on Maria's ship, she stared out of the window, her thoughts racing. They had come so far, but the hardest part was still ahead. Lian's voice broke the silence. Do you think the galaxy will listen? Maria's gaze was firm. They have to. If we don't fight for those who can't speak, who will? The ship continued toward its destination, unaware that danger was already closing in. The final battle was about to begin. Maria's ship dropped out of hyperspace, and the view before them made her heart race. The Free News Network's massive space station floated in the void, its bright satellites blinking like distant stars. It was one of the few media platforms that operated outside the Galactic Council's control. If they could reach it, they could expose the truth to the entire galaxy. Daniel checked the scanners. We're almost there. Sending a transmission request now. Lian kept her eyes on the radar. Let's just hope we're not too late. The ship's communicator crackled to life. A voice, calm but cautious, spoke. This is Free News Network Control. Identify yourself. Maria leaned forward. My name is Maria. I have evidence that the Galactic Council is covering up the mistreatment of animals across the galaxy. We need to broadcast this immediately. There was a long silence. Then, another voice spoke, this one sharper. We've heard about you, human. Many support your cause, but this is dangerous information. The Council won't stay silent. Maria took a deep breath. That's why it's important. People deserve to know the truth. Another pause. Then the voice said, Docking Bay 3 is open, but hurry. Daniel steered the ship toward the station. But before they could reach it, an alarm blared. Lian's eyes widened. Incoming ships. Maria's stomach twisted as she looked at the scanner. A fleet of Council warships had arrived, their weapons locking onto the station. At the center of the fleet was the largest ship, a black dreadnought. Vrix's ship. A cold, calculated voice echoed through the communicator. Human girl, you have interfered for long enough. Vrix's face appeared on the main screen. His yellow eyes glowed with fury. "Surrender now, and perhaps I will show mercy." Maria clenched her fists. "I know what your mercy looks like. We're not stopping." Vrix sighed. "Then you leave me no choice." The fleet opened fire. The Free News Network station's shields flared as they absorbed the first wave of blasts, but they wouldn't hold for long. The Council had brought overwhelming firepower. Inside Maria's ship, Daniel's hands moved quickly over the controls. "We need to get to the station before they take us out." Maria turned to Lian. "Can we send the evidence remotely?" Lian shook her head. "Not while they're jamming communications. We need to be inside the station to broadcast." Maria's mind raced. They had only one chance. She grabbed the communicator. "News network, prepare to receive our transmission. We're coming in fast." The ship dodged enemy fire as Daniel pushed it to maximum speed. The station's docking bay loomed ahead. But then, a blast struck the side of their ship. Alarms blared. "We've been hit," Daniel shouted. "Engines failing." Maria's heart pounded. If they crashed now, everything would be lost. Lian's fingers flew over the backup systems. "We still have emergency thrusters, just enough for one last push." Maria grabbed the controls with Daniel. Together, with a final burst of power, the ship shot forward, barely slipping into the docking bay before the engines died. The landing was rough, but they had made it. The moment the doors opened, station staff ran toward them. "Get us to a broadcast room," Maria yelled. They were rushed inside as the station shook from more enemy fire. The Council's fleet was preparing to destroy them completely. Inside the main broadcasting chamber, Maria and Lian uploaded the evidence. The recordings, the secret meetings, the suffering of the animals, it was all there. A news anchor turned to Maria. "Are you ready?" Maria took a deep breath and nodded. The camera went live. She looked straight into it and spoke with all the strength she had. "To every being in the galaxy, my name is Maria. The truth has been hidden from you for too long, but today you will see it for yourself." She played the footage. Every screen in the galaxy, every station, every device. Suddenly, they all displayed the evidence. Billions watched as the truth unfolded before their eyes. Vrix's corruption, the suffering he allowed, the Council's lies. The galaxy was silent. Then the people began to speak. Protests erupted across planets. Council members who had once been silent were now forced to act. Governments demanded justice. Vrix's voice roared through the station speakers. "You think this changes anything?" But Maria smiled. "It already has." At that moment, the fleet around them hesitated. Some ships powered down their weapons. Others turned away. The people were no longer afraid. The battle was over. Maria closed her eyes for a moment. She had done it. Not alone, but with the help of those who had chosen to stand for what was right. Lian put a hand on her shoulder. "The fight isn't over. But today, we won." Maria nodded. For the first time, hope filled the galaxy. And it had all started with a single human girl who dared to speak. The end.